This is an ad for a project management tool called Monday.com. This is what it looks like, and this is what it feels like.
So the tool works like this.
We call this a board. This is an ad
Just
for a
put
project
everything you
management
need to
tool
do
called
here, then
Monday.com.
put
This
who's
is
in
what it
charge
looks
of it
like,
here,
and
see
this
where
is what it
everything
feels
stands
like.
here. Also, it works on your phone because it's 2019. Click, drag and drop. So the tool works like this. Exactly
We
the way
call
you
this
need
a
it.
board. This is
Never
an ad
drop
for a
it all.
project
Everything you need
management
to
tool
do
called
here. Then
Monday.com.
so go
This
to
is what it looks
Monday.com
like,
here,
create your
and
free
see where
account, what it
everything
feels
stands
like.
here. Also, it works on your phone because it's 2019. Click, drag and drop. So the tool works like this. Exactly the way you need it.
Planet Dolan. From weird men lurking in your basement to close calls with serial killers, the Planet Dolan crew reenact some of your best true stories from our subreddit about the creepiest things you've ever experienced. I'm Danger Dolan's mysterious brother, Zaraganbar, and today I'll be your narrator. Number 10 was submitted by Tat8888. When Pringle was 13, he and some friends were hanging out in his basement when suddenly they heard a loud bang coming from the water boiler room. He assumed it was a mousetrap going off, so he picked up a plastic bag and got gloves to get rid of the rat, but when they opened the door, there was no mouse to be found. Pringle decided to get his dad to investigate, so he went to the boiler room with a flashlight. As soon as his dad flashed the torch into the dark room, he slammed the door shut and told Pringle to call the police. It turns out there was a man living in the boiler room. No one knows how long he had been living there. Number 9 was submitted by Storm669. When Spinal Palm was younger, he was walking home from a friend's house one night. It was just hitting dusk and almost all sunlight had disappeared. A streetlight above him had flickered off, and he started to hear footsteps behind him. Naturally, he turned around to see who it was. What he saw was a black hooded figure, but he couldn't make out a face because it was quite some distance away. He felt uneasy, but continued on. The closer he got to home though, the louder these footsteps got, almost as if they were coming from inside his head. He turned around once more to see the figure standing right behind him. He ran to his front door and slammed it shut. When he looked out the window to see the man, there was nothing to be found. Number 8 was submitted by Peridot.su Gem. When Melissa was a child, her older brothers used to tell her about an old man named Danny who lived nearby. Apparently, Danny brutally murdered his parents and now lives by himself. One day Melissa and her brothers were walking to school when they spotted Danny coming towards them. Her brothers told her not to panic, but she was too scared and hid in the bushes. When she thought he was gone, she left the bushes. But she was wrong and heard a loud growl behind her. She ran home crying. Many years later, when she was driving home, she looked out the window and saw Danny standing on the side of the road in the rain, staring directly at her. She sped home and never looked back. Number 7 was submitted by Ili Danger Doolan. When they were teenagers, Danger Dolan and his girlfriend Gooby were playing with a Ouija board. Nothing spooky happened, and they got tired, so they went to bed. But around 4 AM, Dolan heard his bedroom door being opened. He went to wake up Gooby, but he realized she wasn't there. He laughed and called out, "Very funny, Gooby, I can see you in the corner." He could see a black outline of a person in the corner of the room standing there. It started moving closer to him. It moved right up to his face and he could feel its breath on his cheek. After what seemed like forever, the figure turned around and walked out of the room. A few seconds later, Gooby came back in the room with a glass of water, confused why Dolan looked like he'd seen a ghost. Number 6 was submitted by Poison XO. When Hellbent was 7 years old, he had a horrible nightmare. He saw himself in a dream, but he wasn't able to interact. He was motionless and just sat there with his eyes wide open. He watched himself get up and grab a knife from the kitchen and started to slice his own arm. The cuts got deeper and deeper, and what came out of his skin wasn't blood. Maggots and bugs crawled out, and as he kept cutting himself, he turned around and faced himself. His face was missing, and you could see his eyeballs drooping out of his skull. The maggots crawled their way toward him and they grew larger and uglier. He woke up screaming in terror. Needless to say, he didn't get much sleep the rest of the night. Number 5 was submitted by Nita Ross. A few years ago, when Ghost Toast was younger, there was a string of nights when he could hear someone or something inside his closet. For hours it would scratch and bang on the door from the inside. He was too scared to check what it was, so he stayed up until it went away or until he unwillingly passed out from fear. Every morning he would check the closet, but nothing had moved and there weren't any scratch marks on the door. It would happen at the same time each night for several weeks, and then one night, there was nothing. It was gone. He hasn't heard it since then, and hopefully won't hear it again. Number 4 was submitted by the Stig USA cousin. Slaptam once set up a secret camera in his house because he wanted to see what his dog does when nobody's home. He was watching the live footage from his laptop when he noticed something weird. In the video, his dog was whimpering in the corner. He was trying to figure out what he was scared of when a figure walked past the camera. Nobody was supposed to be in his house. The figure appeared a few more times before disappearing. When Slaptam got home that night, he didn't find anyone in his house. In fact, the only thing that was missing was his toothbrush. Number 3 was submitted by Toxic Glow. Doopy was locked out of her house one night, so she went to every window in the house and tried to open it. None of them budged. She started to get really annoyed, so when she saw the garage window was open, she figured all she needed to do was remove the screen and climb in. She balanced on a chair to reach the window and started taking the screen off when she heard footsteps. She paused and looked in, and saw a shadowy figure standing in the middle of the garage, facing away from her. She tried to take a step back and of course fell straight to the ground. She was pretty freaked out by what she saw, and there was nothing she could do but cry and wait for her parents to come home for 2 long hours. Number 2 was submitted by The Wolves Speak. Honeybits and Emoji once went for a walk to a local nature park when they came across a man whose eyes were almost completely black. They tried not to stare and kept walking. Honeybits noticed from the corner of her eye that he was following them, getting closer and closer. She grabbed Emoji's arm and yelled, "Run!" They hid in some trees until the man was out of sight. The next day, Emoji sent Honeybits a message telling her to turn on the news. It turns out the man following them was an escaped murderer who was caught only a few hours after they saw him in the park. They were very lucky to be alive. Number 1 was submitted by me. In high school, some friends and I decided to visit the school at midnight. We jammed the door open with a brick at the end of the day so we could get in that night. We snuck in and kept the door jammed open just in case. We were poking around a gym storage cupboard when, after a few minutes, we heard a door slam shut. It was the door we jammed open. We heard footsteps approaching and we freaked out and hid. The school didn't have any security that we knew of. Those footsteps came right towards us, like they knew where we were. My heart was pounding in my chest. As it got closer, we could hear a man mumbling to himself. He sounded angry and erratic. The steps passed by and turned a corner. As soon as they did, we ran hard as we could. We never looked back. A huge thanks to the folks over on our Planet Dolan subreddit for submitting their stories. We have another question for you. What's the weirdest punishment your parents ever gave you? Let us know in the Reddit page link below and you might be featured in a future countdown. Well, that's it for this countdown, but catch you guys next time.
So, Gooby has the habit of biting her nails. And it's annoying because it does a little click noise every time you do it, and I guess people go crazy over it. I don't know.
Hi, Hyun here with League of Legends. Now you're gonna be saying wow every time you play this video game. Now look at this, I'm a blind monk. 1 slap, I'm farming some gold. 2 slaps, you slap on some friends, and look at the more you slap the funner it gets. You don't have to switch any games. Now you like your friends, but you hate finding it. Play solo, meet new people, play with your friends to build up that teamwork. Now I'm an introvert too, but get the friends in once in a while. League of Legends, one of the most played games in the entire world. You wanna play a cute furry devil that shoots darts in your eyes? There's a champion for that. You wanna play an undead crying zombie with depression? There's a champion for that. You want to play a fat evil cyborg who has his legs replaced with mechanical spider arms and shoots a hook from his belly button and grabs onto people and sucks them into an orifice where they're grinded up alive? We have a champion for that. Over 140 champions to choose from, each with different playstyles and abilities. Now, you know we can't do this all day, but if you slap on that link below, I'm gonna give you this game for free. We're gonna make the world LOL again. One slap at a time. I didn't know what to do with my life until I found League of Legends. Now I play with my friends all day.
It's really easy. I can finally play video games with my grandson now.
Download and play League of Legends for free.
My team and I always had trouble managing our tasks until one of my colleagues found Monday.com. You can see the task owner, what the deadline is, change the status, and it's all in one place. Inside each task, you can make comments, attach files, tag people. It's brilliant. It's completely transformed the way that we work. Honestly, I don't know what we would do without it.
Planet Dolan.
From accidental sex talk
To me interrupting with a cringe story.
the Planet Dolan crew reenact more of the best true stories from our subreddit about the cringiest things that we said as kids that we now regret. I'm Melissa, and today I'll be your narrator. Number 10 was submitted by the King Cam. When Dolan's brother was in 1st grade, he said something he now regrets. To start her lesson, the teacher made everyone sit down on the floor. Dolan's brother thought the other students were sitting a little too close to him. He wanted to impress everyone with a big word, so he said,
Guys, can you back away? I'm constipated.
he meant to say claustrophobic, but it was too late. The teacher corrected him and everyone laughed at his expense. He still can't figure out why he had trouble making friends that year. Number 9 was submitted by Slenderman XXSD. My friend Dolan has always been searching for the truth, even when he was little. Like one time, he wanted to know all about what happened when he was born. He asked his mother if they cut the umbilical cord when he came out. His mother told him they sure did, and Dolan said,
"Oh, that's why my penis is so small."
When Dolan thinks back on this, he melts into a big puddle of cringe. Number 8 was submitted by CDA 1998. When Tolop was 5 years old, his parents dragged him along to watch his sister perform a concert. Naturally, he was bored out of his mind. So, he started looking around at the people in the audience. The guy sitting next to him had a very noticeable birthmark. It was bright red and covered his whole ear and cheek. Tolop had never seen something like this, so, in the middle of a song, he shouted,
"Hey! What's wrong with your face?"
Everyone in the audience stared at him in shock, and Tolop got yelled at all the way home. Now that he's older, Tolop is friends with the man's daughter, so they run into each other from time to time. Every time Tolop sees him, he thinks about that awkward night. Number 7 was submitted by Kogaz Girl. When Snoopy was a little kid, she went for a ride to the mall with her mom, grandparents, and sister. As soon as they got in the grandpa's car, Snoopy said, "Ew, it smells like old people in here." Snoopy's grandparents were a bit sensitive about their age, so they asked her what old people are supposed to smell like. Without thinking, Snoopy shouted, "Death and graveyard dirt." They spent the rest of the car ride in silence. Number 6 was submitted by—
Hey, excuse me, interrupting. Hi, Kyle. Hi. When I was a really young kid, to the point where I couldn't even remember it, my dad took me to a movie theater. In the middle of watching the film after having a large soda, I really had to pee. So my dad took me to the restroom. I found the nearest urinal and immediately started peeing there. I look to my right and also see a man peeing, just a few urinals down. I turn to my dad and say,
Dad, he has a penis too!
To which my dad recalls the man's face turning a very bright red almost immediately. Less than a second later, you hear a zip, and the man made a beeline to the door.
Number 5 was submitted by TPig28. Pringle's cringiest line came when he and his friend were playing The Legend of Zelda in his room. In the game, they were running around the village, chasing chickens and throwing them around. Pringle's brother happened to come in just as Pringle shouted,
"Stop running and grab the freaking cock!"
Pringle has never lived this down. Number 4 was submitted by Uni Chicken. When Emoji was 9, he was a big YouTube fan. One day, he came home from school to watch the latest PewDiePie video. In the video, a hater told PewDiePie that he sucked, and PewDiePie responded by saying, "You swallow!" Emoji didn't understand what this meant, but He thought it was pretty funny. Later that day, Emoji was in the kitchen with his mom. After joking around, his mom playfully told him that he sucked. Emoji laughed, looked his mom square in the eye, and said, "Well, you swallow." His mom's face went totally white. Emoji knew he'd said something wrong. He thought it had something to do with foods and drinks, so his mom had to awkwardly explain its more sexual meaning. Emoji excused himself, saying, "I'm gonna go die in a hole now." He still cringes whenever he remembers this. Number 3 was submitted by Emily Ann 11696. When Andy was 7, she accidentally walked in on her brother peeing. She was a very naive little girl and didn't know anything about the male anatomy. It was a big surprise for her to learn that boys stood when they peed. Later on, Andy was having dinner with her family when the conversation somehow turned to the topic of men peeing. Andy jumped up from her seat and said proudly,
"I know where boys pee out of."
Andy's parents looked really worried, as they hadn't yet given her the talk. Her dad said, "You do?" And Andy blurted out,
"Yeah, from their belly button."
Everyone at the table laughed. Andy never figured out what was so funny until sex ed in 8th grade. She now cringes at how innocent she was. Number 2 was submitted by Miss Twinkle 101. When Doopy was a teenager, she worked at a grocery store. On St. Patrick's Day, she decided to get into the spirit by wearing a lei of tiny shamrocks. A customer came up to the register. Doopy noticed he looked a little down. She wanted to brighten his day, so she pointed to her shamrocks and blurted out,
"Hey, check it out! I got laid!"
A big smile spread across the customer's face, and Doopy realized her embarrassing innuendo. She then tried to cover it up, saying,
"I mean, I've been shamrocked."
The customer laughed and said, "That's even worse." Doopy was mortified and wanted to hide herself away. But hey, at least she cheered him up. And for number 1, I'm going to tell you guys about something I said when I was a kid. When I was about 5, my dad took me for a car ride, and we stopped at the gas station to get gas. At the time, I didn't realize that the word gas had 2 meanings, the type that you fill your car with, gasoline, and the type that comes out of your bum, flatulence. So I told my dad, "Dad, why do you pay for gasoline? Why don't you just put your butt up against the tank and let it rip, and there you go, free gas?" I wish I were kidding about this, but true story. Huge thanks for all the folks over on our Planet Dylan subreddit for submitting their stories. We have another question for you. What's the worst you've ever overreacted? Let us know on the Reddit page linked below, and you may be featured in a future countdown. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.
Gooby would buy his snacks and movie ticket. Gooby ended up dumping him before they even went into the theater, but the guy still came in and sat behind them. He spent the whole movie annoying Gooby, begging her to take him back. He kept this up for Planet Dolan. From offering blowjobs to asking how many balls girls have, the Planet Dolan crew reenacts some of the best true stories from our subreddit about the cringiest things you ever said as a kid. I'm Danger Dolan, and today I'll be on the Rita. I'm sorry, I keep doing the rolling R thing. I've done it like 5 times and I feel obligated to do it every time. I'm sorry. Don't judge me. Number 10 was submitted by Toasted Waffle 3. One time when she was very young, Melissa was vacuuming her house and her brothers were cleaning the fridge because ice cream had spilled all over it. She overheard them saying they need a vacuum cleaner to clean the rest of the mess, so she went into the kitchen and said,
"Does anyone need a blowjob in here?"
Her brothers started laughing hysterically, but Melissa was too young to understand what the joke was. When they finally told her what it meant, she was super embarrassed. Number 9 was submitted by Sophie Osama. When Nixian was in preschool, he was super shy. He only had a few friends and his teacher was his best friend. One day, Nixium's teacher said it was National Compliment Day, where each person had to say something nice to someone. So Nixium stood up in front of several teachers, pointed to his teacher and said,
"You have a nice butt."
The teacher smiled awkwardly and a few other kids laughed. He then realized what he said and sat back down very quickly. Number 8 was submitted by Bubby56789. When my brother was in 4th grade, he'd carpool with the kids next door because they all went to the same school. One day in the car, one of the neighbors brought the conversation to pregnancy, and they were really engaged. Somehow, one of the girls made my brother mad, so he blurted out,
"Shut up, or I'll make you pregnant."
He didn't know what sex was yet, so everyone was staring at him in shock. Not surprisingly, she avoided him in the car after that. Number 7 was submitted by Call Me Cap Kid. When Emoji was in 2nd grade, his class went on a bathroom break. He was wearing blue Hanes boxer briefs that day. At the time, he thought that all boys liked the color blue, so naturally he figured that he would get a little more respect because he was wearing a manly color. He went into the bathroom and confidently walked up to a urinal. He then turned to the kids next to him and said,
"I'm wearing blue today. Blue is a cool color."
As soon as he said it out loud, he realized how dorky he sounded, and his friends mocked him for the rest of the year. Number 6 was submitted by Brillin the Wolf. When Pringle was about 4 or 5 years old, he was in the car with his family who had gone on vacation. He was sitting between his older brother and sister in the back of their family station wagon. After hearing the voices on the radio talking about a certain subject, Pringle looked at his mum with a completely straight face and asked,
"Mom, am I a virgin?"
His siblings cracked up laughing and his dad shouted, "I sure hope so!" His family still laughs about how innocent and awkward it was to this day. Number 5 was submitted by Morbus Akura. When Slaptan was 4 years old, he refused to sleep in his own room, so he'd go and sleep in his brother's room. He was quite attached to his brother and followed him everywhere, so one day his brother went to use the bathroom and he followed him, watching as he went to take a piss. He walked up to his brother with a confused look on his face and said to him,
"Don't piss in Mr. Toilet."
He then walked out. His brother was shocked and pretty much speechless for the rest of the day. Number 4 was submitted by StarKiller7714. When Pandora was younger, she used to think everything got its color by hair dye. And one day, her younger brother asked her, "How come fishes are different colors?" So she told him,
"You can change the color of a fish. Just get a cup of hair dye and pour it on, and the fish will be a different color."
A few weeks later, she found out the hard way that this wasn't true. When all the fish in the fish tank just died suddenly, and her brother was found holding a packet of hair dye. Number 3 was submitted by Sub to WR Everything. When Doopy was about 7 years old, she was at her grandmother's house during summer vacation. Doopy and her grandmother were sitting on the porch talking about life one summer afternoon when Doopy asked her grandma a pretty hilarious question. She looked at her grandma with a serious face and asked,
"Grandma, have you ever had children?"
She looked at Doopy and put her face in her palm. It took Doopy a few seconds to realize it was done. Number 2 was submitted by NetPie22. Ladybot's childhood best friend was a guy. They had a sleepover one night. They were innocently talking about biology. Her friend knew that girls were different to guys, so he asked her,
"Hey Ladybot, how many balls do girls have?"
She was very young and had no idea what balls were. He asked again like it was common knowledge, so she took a guess at it because she didn't want to seem stupid or anything. So according to young innocent Ladybot, girls have 13 balls. Highly accurate. Number 1 was submitted by me. What's the cringiest thing I've ever said as a kid? Right, so I was walking through the market with my mum. I was about 7 or 8, something like that. And I was getting pretty frustrated all day. I was just in a bad mood, the sun wasn't out and I was sweating slightly. It was a horrible cataclysmic day, nothing could go right. So my mum and I walked through this really condensed, packed market walkway, full of people. You could barely take a step in any direction. It was just crowd mayhem. And so coming through the lane was this woman in a wheelchair. And again, I was a huge shitbag. And so when the lady in the wheelchair finally wheeled directly in front of me and I wouldn't move, and I was trying, but I couldn't. And I was just like, oh, this is so annoying. And my mum was like yanking on me like, come on, move for her, move. And so I looked up at my mum and I said, look, it's not my fault she's in a wheelchair. Very loudly. Everyone just stopped. Everyone around me just stopped and stared at me. my mom took out a hand and slapped me across the face. And god damn it, man, I deserved that. I had no idea what I was saying. The woman in the wheelchair looked mortified. You probably ruined her fucking day. So I not only deserved a slap, I needed to be shot into space to learn my lesson. Every time I think back on it, I just want to go back in time, snap young Dolan's legs off, and put him in a wheelchair and be like, alright, do you understand what you did wrong now? Okay? Telling her this is not your fault. But because when you can't walk, little Dolan, it's not very fun now, is it? You giant cock. Huge thanks to folks over at Planet Dolan subreddit for submitting their stories. We have another question for you. What's the most unprofessional thing you have ever experienced? Let us know on the Reddit page link below and you might be featured in a future countdown. That's it for this video. Have a good one!
In Honolulu, there are a lot of homeless people, but they usually sleep in tents at public parks. They began to explore until Ghost Host found the person that lived there. It looked like some tags, but
Planet Dolan.
From trying to cheat the store to forgetting where they just put their change, the Planet Dolan crew reenacts some of the best true stories from our subreddit about the dumbest things we've seen customers do. I'm Hellbent, and today I'll be your narrator. Number 10 was submitted by Bulbasaur1500. Dolan worked at a gaming store and a customer tried to sell off her Pokemon Red game, except the cartridge wasn't Pokemon Red. It was a Game Boy Color cartridge painted red.
Hey, wanna play some video games? I know I do. I haven't seen the sun in years. So, let's play League of Legends.
Planet Dolan.
From almost falling off a cliff to being chased by a vicious dog, the Planet Dolan crew reenacts some of the best true stories from our subreddit about the most dangerous situations we've ever been in. I'm Hellbent, and today I'll be your narrator. Number 10 was submitted by FazRare57. Dolan was in an Uber with his brother. They ended up on Reddit about the most dangerous situations we've ever been in. I'm Hellbent, and today I'll be your narrator. Number 10 was submitted by FazRare57. Dolan was in an Uber with his brother. They ended up passing Dolan's house, and his brother said,
"Hey, you passed it."
Then there was a silence. The driver said, "I know." Dolan didn't call 911 because, judging by what he just said, he'd just throw his phone out the window. He looked at his brother, who was already dialing. Dolan whispered,
"Don't, he'll just throw your phone out."
They stopped behind a building that used to be an AGB. Then the driver got out, opened the door, and socked Dolan in the face, again and again and again. Dolan's brother tried to stop him, but he pulled a gun on him. Then he hit Dolan in the head with the gun. Next thing he knew, Dolan and his brother were on the ground in a small pool of blood with their wallets gone. Dolan had the police run the plates, and a few days later the cops brought their wallets back. All their money was gone, and all that was left was a note that said, "I'll be back." Number 9 was submitted by Cookie Cake FTW. The most dangerous situation Doopy has ever been in was when she was at her preschool, when suddenly a bomb was thrown into the principal's office, which her class was next to. Everybody began to evacuate, and while evacuating, Doopy saw it explode in a cloud of smelly smoke. She was coughing like hell when she came out. That smell lasted for weeks. Later, that man was arrested, and school went back to normal, but she missed a week of school. Another time, she was surrounded by a gang of cats. Because she's allergic, Doopy's whole body puffed up and she couldn't breathe. She had to go to the hospital and stay there for 2 days. Meow meow, lava Doopy, meow. Number 8 was submitted by Morbius Akura. Shima was at her aunt's house, decorating for Halloween. Her brother was getting some streamers and balloons for a party. Shima and her cousin were cutting paper ghost until she heard one of her aunt's dogs bark and whine. Her uncle ran downstairs and said a fire had started. Her cousin started crying and Shima panicked. Shima ran upstairs to get her aunt's cousin and she told her about the fire, who ran downstairs with the others. Shima heard the dog and saw it stuck in the bedroom. She went to free it, but the fumes started to get to her and she started to pass out. Before she did, Shima called and reached out for her brother. After what seemed like hours, she woke up in her brother's arms as he rushed her out of the house. It turned out someone set the house on fire. Shima thought she was going to die, and one of her aunt's dogs didn't make it. Poor thing. She was rushed to the hospital and luckily wasn't injured. Shima was so happy to see that her relatives were saved and that her brother saved her, but the whole situation still scarred her to this day. Number 7 was submitted by Novice Artist. The most dangerous situation Mikhailum has been in was when he was 14. He was staying at his grandparents' when one day he went to his aunt's house to see his cousins. His aunt had this ATV Ranger, and she asked Mikhailum if he wanted to drive it. He didn't want to, but she persisted and he eventually gave in. His 2 little cousins rode with him, and they drove around a bit. One of his cousins kept telling him to go faster and make fast turns. And being the dumb shit that he was, Mikhailum did it, but then went a little too fast. The Ranger flew into the air and ejected Mikhailum, with him hitting his jaw on the ATV and breaking it. For a few minutes, he couldn't even breathe. He wasn't afraid, but he was thinking,
well, this is how I die.
But then Mikhailum started to breathe again, so he got up and got his cousins out of the ATV. They walked back to the house with Mikhailum texting his mom that he broke his jaw. He did get a cool cheek scar out of it, though. You don't want to fuck with me. I crashed an ATV. Number 6 was submitted by Fudge Nugget Blue. The most dangerous situation Gergak was in was when he was about 8, when him and his family went on a trip to El Salvador for the summer. One day, they took a ride on a truck with his dad, his mom, his siblings, and some other relatives in the mountains to go hiking. Gergak and his sisters were in the back of the truck, enjoying the view. Gergak decided to sit on a chair that was tied from one of the hooks of the truck near the right side of the truck's window. After a while, it was fine, but once his dad hit a bump in the road, the chair flipped backwards and Gergak was dangling from the chair for a few minutes. There was a possibility that he would have plummeted 10,000 feet until finally one of his siblings pulled him back onto the truck. Number 5 was